The air in the conference room was thick with unspoken words, chilled by a silent, expensive air conditioning system. It was the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, a perfect match for the ice forming in my veins. Across the polished mahogany table, Ethan sat beside his mother, Carol. He looked smaller than I remembered, shrunken by the tailored suit that now hung loosely on his frame. His eyes, the same eyes I had once found my entire world in, were red-rimmed and pleading. Carol, however, stared at me with a venom that could curdle milk. Her perfectly coiffed hair and pearl necklace were a mockery of civility. "You can't do this, Elena," she hissed, her voice a low, sharp whisper. "After everything we've done for you, Ethan loves you." I let the accusation hang in the air, a foul scent in a sterile room. My lawyer, Jess, sat beside me, a silent pillar of strength. She had instructed me not to speak, but this was a moment I had earned. I slowly turned my head, my gaze drifting past Carol to land directly on my husband. My husband. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. "Do you love me, Ethan?" I asked. My voice was calm, measured, a placid lake over a raging abyss. "Or did you just love the idea of me? The convenience of me? The support I gave you while you built your little empire on my sacrifices?" He flinched, a flicker of pain crossing his face before it was replaced by desperation. "Elena, please." I offered a small, empty smile. "It doesn't matter anymore." "None of it does." I leaned forward slightly, my hands clasped on the table. "Because I'm here to take back everything. Every cent. Every lie. Every piece of my life you stole." The woman who said those words was a stranger to me, a ghost forged in betrayal. 3 weeks earlier, that woman didn't exist. 3 weeks earlier, I was just a wife, happy and in love, on my way home to surprise the man I thought I would spend my life with. The flight from Chicago had been smooth, the landing in Boston seamless. I'd wrapped up the publishing conference a day early, securing the rights to a novel I knew would be a bestseller. The victory hummed through me, a pleasant buzz of adrenaline and satisfaction. But underneath it all was a deeper, warmer feeling, the anticipation of seeing Ethan. It was our anniversary. 7 years. I pictured his face, the way his eyes would light up when I walked through the door a full day before he expected me. I'd even managed to grab a small box of his favorite cannolis from a famous bakery in the North End. On my way from the airport, the drive to our home in Maple Creek was familiar and comforting. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the manicured lawns and stately colonial houses. Our home, a beautiful two-story with dark blue siding and a welcoming front porch, was my sanctuary. It was the place we had built together, filled with memories and laughter and the quiet intimacy of a shared life. Or so I believed. I pulled into the driveway, my heart doing a little flutter. I grabbed my suitcase and the box of pastries, juggling them as I walked up the stone path. I slid my key into the lock. It turned, but the door didn't budge. I tried again. Nothing. It was dead-bolted from the inside. A small frown creased my forehead. That was odd. Ethan never used the deadbolt when he was home alone. It was a habit of mine, not his. He must have started doing it for security. I reasoned. That's good. I pressed the doorbell, listening to the familiar chime echo inside the silent house. I waited. No footsteps. No click of the lock. I pressed it again, holding it down longer this time. Still nothing. A prickle of unease started in the back of my neck. Maybe he was in the backyard with headphones on. I pulled out my phone, my fingers flying across the screen to his contact photo, a smiling selfie we took in Cape Cod last summer. It rang twice before he picked up. "Hey, you," he said. His voice was off, strained. "Hey yourself," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Guess who's home early?" There was a pause. Not a happy, surprised pause, but a heavy, panicked one. "What? No, you're not. Your flight isn't until tomorrow morning." I finished up early and caught an earlier flight. I'm standing on our front porch, actually, and you seem to have dead-bolted me out. I laughed, but the sound felt hollow. "Are you going to let your weary wife in?" "Oh, right. The deadbolt." He sounded breathless, distracted. "Listen, Lena, I can't. I'm not home." My smile faded. "You're not home? Then who locked the door?" "I did. This morning. I'm stuck at the office. We're in the middle of a huge server crisis. It's all hands on deck. I'll be here all night." The lie was so sudden, so clumsy. It took my breath away. There was a noise in the background of the call. A faint, rhythmic whooshing sound. It wasn't the hum of servers or the chatter of an office. It sounded like waves. Like the ocean. A server crisis. I repeated slowly, my mind struggling to make sense of the discord. Ethan. What's that noise in the background? Noise? It's just the ventilation system. It's loud in here. Look. I'm sorry about the anniversary. Baby. I feel terrible. I was going to call you. Can we celebrate this weekend? I'll make it up to you. I promise. His words were rushed, tumbling over each other. He wasn't just lying. He was panicked. My unease blossomed into a cold, hard knot of dread in my stomach. Okay, I said. My voice barely a whisper. Okay, Ethan. Just take care of it. I'll figure out a way in. Yeah. Okay. I gotta go. Love you. He hung up before I could reply. I stood frozen on my own porch, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dead air. He was lying. I knew it with a certainty that was terrifying. Ethan was a terrible liar. His voice always got tight. His excuses too detailed. And that sound, it was the ocean. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for our property management company. A friendly young man named Mark answered. Hi Mark. It's Elena Vance from 12 Oak Street. I seem to have locked myself out. My husband deadbolted the door from the inside and he's not home. Is there any way you could come let me in with the master key? Oh, hey. Mrs. Vance. No problem at all. I can be there in 5 minutes, he said cheerfully. Then he paused. Wait. Did you say you were locked out? I thought you were with them. The knot in my stomach tightened. With who? With Mr. Miller and his family. He told us you were all going on a big family vacation. To Cancun. I think he said. Said you guys were celebrating some good news. Anyway, he left a spare key with us for the landscapers. I'll just use that. See you in a bit. He hung up. Cancun. The word echoed in the sudden, deafening silence. Cancun. Family vacation. Good news. The world tilted on its axis. The perfect, manicured lawns of Maple Creek blurring at the edges. My lungs felt tight, as if a steel band were constricting around my chest. It had to be a mistake. A misunderstanding. Ethan was at work. He was dealing with a server crisis. He had just told me so. But Mark's cheerful, innocent words felt more real than my husband's strained voice over the phone. The 5 minutes it took for Mark to arrive felt like an eternity. I sat on the porch steps, the box of Canalys forgotten beside me, my mind racing through 100 impossible scenarios. None of them made sense. When Mark's golf cart pulled up, I stood on numb legs, forcing a smile that felt like cracking glass. Here you go, he said, easily unlocking the deadbolt. All set. Have a good evening. Mrs. Vance. Thank you. Mark. I managed to say. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was dark. Silent. Not the comfortable silence of a home waiting for its occupants, but an empty, sterile silence. A chill that had nothing to do with the temperature crawled over my skin. I didn't turn on the lights. I stood in the dim entryway, my senses on high alert, listening to the frantic beating of my own heart. The air was stale, carrying the faint, cloying scent of a perfume I didn't recognize. My gaze swept across the living room. Everything was neat. Too neat. The throw pillows on the couch were perfectly arranged. The magazines on the coffee table were squared away. It looked like a show home, not a lived-in space. It felt like my life had been staged, and I was an intruder who had just walked onto the set after the actors had left. My eyes landed on the digital photo frame on the console table by the stairs. It was a gift I'd given Ethan for his last birthday, an easy way to cycle through our favorite memories. A picture of us hiking in the Berkshires, a photo from our wedding day, a silly selfie from a concert. Then, a new picture flashed onto the screen. It was bright, sunny, taken in what looked like an airport terminal. The entire Miller family was there. Ethan, his mother Carol, his father Richard, his younger brother Kevin, and Kevin's wife, Tiffany. They were all beaming, their arms around each other, and standing next to Ethan, tucked securely under his arm, was a young woman I had never seen before. She was beautiful, with long, blonde hair and a radiant smile. Her free hand was resting gently, possessively, on her visibly swollen stomach. A baby bump. Ethan's arm was wrapped tightly around her shoulders. his smile wider and more carefree than I had seen it in years. He was looking at her, not the camera, with an expression of pure adoration. Carol, my mother-in-law, who had always lamented that I was to focus on my career, to give her grandchildren, was looking at the young woman's belly with an ecstatic grin. They looked like the perfect, happy family, celebrating a new life. I was not in the picture. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my suitcase handle digging into my palm. My breath hitched. My mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Who was this woman? Why was Ethan looking at her like that? Why was his entire family celebrating her pregnancy? The digital frame cycled to the next photo. It was a picture of me and Ethan, on our honeymoon in Italy, smiling and young and hopelessly in love. The contrast was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that knocked all the air from my lungs. The happy woman in that photo from 7 years ago was a stranger. Her life, her marriage, her future, it was all a lie. And the proof was right here, glowing silently in the dark. My phone buzzed in my hand. A violent, intrusive vibration against my numb palm. A notification lit up the screen. It was from our shared calendar app. Anniversary dinner at Contessa. 8 p.m. Don't forget. The little heart emoji was a cruel joke. I had put that reminder in a month ago. A ghost from a life that was no longer mine. The sight of it broke my paralysis. I moved on autopilot, my feet carrying me towards the kitchen island where the family iPad lay charging. My hands were shaking so badly it took 2 tries to unlock it with my fingerprint. The screen came to life, showing the same serene background image of a beach in Maine as my phone. A life of carefully curated, false tranquility. A little red badge glowed on the email icon. One unread message. My heart hammered against my ribs as I tapped it open. The subject line read, "Your villa confirmation, Ocean Breeze Resort, Cancun." The email was addressed to Ethan. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning the text, absorbing the damning details. "Dear Mr. Miller, we are delighted to confirm your reservation for the oceanfront honeymoon villa for 7 nights. We look forward to welcoming you and Mrs. Miller." Mrs. Miller. The words twisted in my gut. But as I scrolled further, to the guest details section, the final nail was driven into my coffin. Guest 1, Ethan Miller. Guest 2, Chloe Sanders. They had replaced me, not just in his bed, or in his heart, but on paper, in a resort reservation. I had been deleted and she had been written into my place, seamlessly taking my name. Mrs. Miller. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculated cruelty, was breathtaking. This wasn't a mistake, a moment of weakness. This was a plan, a hostile takeover of my life. A frantic, desperate hope still flickered within me. Maybe it's a work trip. Maybe she's a client. But I knew in the same way an animal senses an earthquake before the ground begins to shake. My fingers, moving with a will of their own, navigated to the shared cloud storage app. It was where we kept everything: financial documents, vacation photos, memories. I clicked on the most recent folder, automatically uploaded from Ethan's phone. It was titled simply, Spring 2024. I opened it. The first photo was of Chloe, sitting at an outdoor cafe, a cup of tea in her hands. She was laughing, her head thrown back, the sun catching the blonde highlights in her hair. It was an intimate photo, taken by someone who adored her. The next few were selfies of her and Ethan, their faces pressed together, goofy grins on their faces. They were in a park, on a boat, in front of a fireplace. They looked so happy, so disgustingly, deliriously happy. I kept scrolling, my thumb moving faster and faster, a torrent of betrayal flooding my screen. There were hundreds of photos, videos, a weekend trip to Vermont, a fancy dinner in the city, a video of them cooking together in an apartment I'd never seen. Chloe playfully smearing flour on Ethan's nose. He hadn't cooked with me in years. He always said he was too tired, too busy. Then I found the images that broke me. Pictures of Chloe with my mother-in-law. Carol was holding Chloe's hands, looking down at her pregnant belly with a loving expression I had never once received from her. In 7 years, all I'd ever gotten were polite, tight-lipped smiles and backhanded comments about my career. Here, she looked at this stranger with pure, unadulterated joy. There was a video of a family dinner at the Miller house. Everyone was raising a glass of champagne except for Chloe, who held a glass of sparkling cider. Ethan's father, Richard, was making a toast to Ethan and Chloe. His voice boomed from the tiny speaker. "And to the newest Miller. Our first grandchild. They cheered. They all cheered. My husband. His parents. His brother. His sister-in-law. They were celebrating the end of my marriage. The end of my life as I knew it. And I was in Chicago, working to close a deal that would have made him proud. A knock at the door made me jump so violently the iPad clattered onto the counter. I stared at the front door, my heart pounding in my throat. Was it him? Had he come back? I crept to the door and peered through the peephole. It was my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, a sweet, white-haired woman who always brought us a portion of her prize-winning apple pie in the fall. She was holding a small cardboard box. I took a deep, shuddering breath, wiped the single tear that had escaped from my eye, and opened the door. "Eleanor, dear," she said, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "So sorry to bother you. This package for you was delivered to my house by mistake." "Oh, thank you, Eleanor," I said, my voice hoarse. I took the box from her. "I was so surprised to see your car in the driveway. Mark from management said you'd all gone to Mexico," she said, her tone friendly and conversational. "Carol was telling me all about it last week. She is just over the moon." I froze. She was? Oh, yes. She introduced me to Ethan's new fiancée, Chloe. Such a lovely girl. Absolutely glowing. Mrs. Henderson patted her own stomach absent-mindedly. "And to be expecting a baby. It's just wonderful news. Carol has been waiting for a grandchild for ages. We all thought you and Ethan had separated so quietly. You know, it was a bit of a shock. But we're all just so happy for them. It's lovely that you're all still friendly enough to travel together." The world swam before my eyes. Fiancé. They hadn't just replaced me. They had announced it to the world. To our neighbors. To anyone who would listen. They had written a new story for themselves and erased me from the narrative, recasting me as the amicable ex-wife who was apparently fine with all of this. My public humiliation was part of their plan. "Yes," I heard myself say, the word sounding like it came from someone else. "It's wonderful news. Well, I'll let you get settled. It was lovely to see you, dear." She gave me a final, warm smile and turned to leave. I closed the door, my back pressing against the cold wood. The box slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. For a moment, there was nothing, just a roaring in my ears. The lies, the pictures, the videos, the cheerful words of my neighbor had all crashed down on me at once. And then, I broke. A sob tore itself from my throat. A raw, wounded sound. My legs gave out and I slid down the door, landing in a heap on the floor. I let myself go completely, surrendering to the hurricane of pain. I cried for the 7 years I had wasted, for the love I had poured into a man who was building a new life behind my back. I cried for the family that had never truly accepted me, who had smiled to my face while they schemed to discard me. I cried for my own stupidity, my own blindness. How could I not have seen it? The late nights at work, the business trips on weekends, the growing distance I had mistaken for stress. The grief was a physical thing, a monster with claws that ripped and tore at my insides. I curled into a ball on the hardwood floor of my cold, empty house and wept until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen shut. I gave the pain exactly 10 minutes. 10 minutes to scream and cry and shatter into a million pieces. Then, as the 10th minute passed, something inside me shifted. The storm of sobs subsided, replaced by an eerie, bone-deep calm. The tears stopped. I pushed myself up from the floor, my movements stiff and deliberate. I walked to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was a wreck. Her face was puffy. Her eyes were red. Her makeup was smeared. She looked weak. Pathetic. She looked like a victim. I turned on the cold water and splashed it on my face, washing away the tears and the mascara and the woman I used to be. As the water dripped from my chin, I looked up again. My eyes were still red, but the weakness was gone. In its place was something new, something hard and cold and sharp. It was rage, pure and undiluted. And beneath the rage was a foundation of unbreakable resolve. They had underestimated me. They saw me as a supportive, accommodating wife, the career woman who was too busy to notice their plotting. They thought they could simply throw me away like garbage, and I would disappear quietly. They were wrong. I was not a victim. I would not be erased. They had started a war. I was going to finish it. My first move was not born of emotion, but of cold, clear logic. I walked into her home office. the one I had designed but rarely used. I went straight to the large painting on the wall, a landscape of the Amalfi Coast, a memento from our honeymoon. I lifted it from its hook, revealing the small wall safe hidden behind it. Ethan thought I didn't know the combination, but I had watched him open it once, his fingers dancing over the keypad. When he thought I wasn't looking, I remembered everything. My fingers, now steady, entered the 6-digit code. The safe clicked open. Inside were our most important documents: passports, birth certificates, car titles, and the deed to the house. There were also several large manila envelopes containing stock certificates and savings bonds. I pulled everything out, my eye scanning each document. The deed to the house was, thankfully, still primarily in my name. We had bought it with the down payment from the sale of my city apartment, a fact that Carol had always resented. But then I saw it. A folder labeled Startup Capital. Inside was a loan agreement against the house's equity for $200,000. The signature at the bottom was a clumsy, almost insulting forgery of my name. He had used her Homie's collateral for his business without my knowledge. I moved on to the bank statements for our joint savings account. I logged into the account online, my blood running cold as I saw the balance. 3 weeks ago, there had been over $150,000 in it. Our life savings? Now, there was less than $5,000. A series of large wire transfers had been made over the past month to an account I didn't recognize. He was bleeding us dry. He was stealing from me, systematically draining our shared assets to fund his new life. This wasn't just a betrayal of the heart. It was a calculated, criminal act. He and his family weren't just trying to replace me. They were trying to leave me with nothing. I carefully placed all the documents into my briefcase, along with the iPad. Evidence. Then, I picked up my phone. I didn't hesitate. My thumb scrolled through my contacts, past the names of friends who would offer sympathy and hugs. I didn't need sympathy. I needed soldiers. I pressed the first name. It rang 3 times. Jess Riley. A sharp, professional voice answered. Jess, it's me, I said. My voice was level, devoid of any tremor. I need to hire you. There was a short pause. Elena, what's wrong? You sound determined. I finished for her. Ethan has a pregnant fiancée. The entire Miller family isn't on it. He's been liquidating our assets. I need the best divorce lawyer in Boston. You've got her, Jess said, her voice instantly shifting from concerned friend to sharp-edged attorney. Don't do anything. Don't call him. Don't text him. Don't touch a single thing. Where are you? At the house. But I'm leaving now. Good. My office. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. We'll build our fortress. I'll be there, I said, and hung up. I immediately dialed the second number. He answered on the first ring. David, it's your cousin, Elena. Lena, everything okay? David Carter's voice was calm and steady, the voice of a man who dealt with chaos for a living. No, I said simply. I need your help. Not as a cop. Officially. Not yet. I need your skills. I need you to find out everything you can about a woman named Chloe Sanders. There was another pause. But David's was different. It was the silence of a man listening, analyzing. Okay, he said slowly. Give me what you've got. I have photos, I said, looking at the damning evidence spread across my briefcase. And I have a feeling this goes much deeper than a simple affair. I took a deep breath, the cold resolve solidifying into something permanent inside me. I need your help, David. My voice dropped, carrying the weight of the war to come. They tried to destroy me. Now, I'm going to bury them. Leaving the house in Maple Creek felt like shedding a skin. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't take any clothes or personal mementos. The woman who lived there, who had chosen the paint colors and planted hydrangeas in the garden, was gone. She had died on the hardwood floor of her empty home. Everything left inside belonged to her memory, and I was in no mood for ghosts. I walked out with my briefcase of evidence, my laptop bag, and my purse, closing the door on 7 years of my life without a backward glance. I drove not to a hotel, but to the one place in the world that had always been a true sanctuary, my parents' brownstone in Beacon Hill. Pulling up to the familiar gaslit street, a wave of exhaustion hit me so hard the world seemed to gray at the edges. For a moment, sitting in the car with the engine off, the little girl inside me wanted to run in, collapse into my mother's arms, and let her make it all go away. But I pushed the feeling down. This wasn't a problem my parents could solve with warm milk and reassuring words. This was a battle I had to lead. But I would need a secure base of operations. My father, a retired corporate lawyer, opened the door before I could ring the bell. His kind, intelligent eyes took in my appearance, me rumpled travel clothes. The stark pallor of my face and his smile faltered. He knew instantly that this was not a casual visit. "Elena," he said, his voice laced with concern as he pulled me into a hug. "What's happened?" My mother appeared behind him, her face a mirror of his worry. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of old books and my mother's baking filling my lungs. I didn't cry. I simply opened my briefcase on their dining room table and laid out the evidence. The forged loan document, the bank statements showing the drained accounts, the iPad with the photos of Ethan's new, perfect family. I told them everything. My voice a flat, emotionless monotone. I recounted the locked door, the phone call, Mark's innocent revelation, the betrayal glowing on the digital frame. I watched their faces shift from confusion to shock, then to a quiet, simmering fury. My father, a man of logic and reason, picked up the forged loan agreement, his jaw tightening as he examined the sloppy imitation of my signature. My mother, a woman of immense heart and empathy, stared at the picture of Carol beaming at Chloe's pregnant stomach, and her expression was one of profound hurt, quickly hardening into fierce maternal protection. When I finished, my father looked up from the documents, his gaze sharp. "He didn't just cheat on you, Elena. This is fraud. This is a coordinated, premeditated effort to defraud you of your assets. They weren't just building a new life. They were financing it with your money." "I know," I said. "Good," he replied, a grim nod of approval. "Because knowing that changes everything. This isn't a matter of the heart anymore. It's a criminal case waiting to happen." He tapped the loan document. "Jess Riley is the right choice for the divorce. But we're going to need more. We need to be meticulous." My mother came and wrapped her arms around my shoulders from behind. She didn't offer platitudes. She didn't say, "I'm so sorry," or "It will be okay." She said, "You will sleep in your old room tonight. Tomorrow, you will fight, and we will be right here with you." In that moment, her strength was a balm to my raw, wounded spirit. This was my true family. This was my fortress. The next morning, I walked into Jess's downtown office feeling like a general arriving at her command center. Jess was already there, a file open on her desk, a steaming cup of coffee waiting for me. She looked at me, her sharp eyes assessing my state. "You look like hell," she said, her tone blunt. "I feel like I've been through it," I replied, taking the coffee. "Good. Let that fuel you," she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her. "I've already pulled their public records. Now, show me what you've got." An hour later, my evidence was spread across her desk. Jess was silent, her focus absolute as she absorbed every detail. She swiped through the photos on the iPad, her expression growing colder with each image. When she read the email from the Cancun resort, a small, humorless smile touched her lips. "Amateurs," she muttered. "They documented their own affair. They gift-wrapped the evidence of adultery for us. This makes a divorce filing clean. Irreconcilable differences, backed by a mountain of infidelity." She then turned her attention to the financial documents. Her demeanor changed. The cynical divorce lawyer was replaced by a predator. "The forged signature is our atomic bomb," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "It's a felony, Elena. Bank fraud. We can press criminal charges. The wire transfers will subpoena the records for the receiving account. I bet my license is in Chloe Sanders' name." Just then, her assistant buzzed. "David Carter is here for you, Jessica. Send him in." David walked in, looking solid and dependable in a worn leather jacket. He nodded at me, a silent message of support in his eyes. Before turning to Jess, he didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Chloe Sanders," he began, pulling a small notebook from his pocket. 25 years old, graduated from a state university with a degree in communications, has worked as an executive assistant at 3 different small companies in the last 4 years. She was fired from the first 2. The third is Ethan's startup. "Fired for what?" Jess asked, leaning forward. "And officially, inappropriate relationships with senior male executives. Both were married. It never went to court, just quiet settlements and non-disclosure agreements. She has a pattern. Finds a married man with money, gets pregnant, and secures her future." My stomach churned. So, I wasn't the first. I was just the latest mark in a long con. She's a professional, I said, the words tasting bitter. She is, David confirmed. And she's not discreet. Her social media is private, but some of her friends' accounts aren't. Found photos of her with a new Kara gift from Ethan. Photos of her shopping for baby furniture with Carol. They've been living this life out in the open, just outside your line of sight. What about the money? Jess pressed. The wire transfers. I'm running a search on the account number you sent me. David said. It'll take a day or two to get a legal trace. But my gut says Jess is right. It's hers. I also ran a preliminary check on Ethan's company. It's leveraged to the hilt. That $200,000 loan he forged your name on. It probably kept the company from going under last month. So that was it. He wasn't just building a new life. He was propping up his failing business on my back, using my assets as his personal emergency fund while planning to discard me. The three of us sat in silence for a moment. The ugly truth of the conspiracy laid bare on the polished desk between us. Okay, Jess said, breaking the silence as she began to pace in front of her window overlooking the harbor. Here's the strategy. It's a two-pronged attack, legal and psychological. Phase 1, shock and awe. She turned to face me. Legally. Tomorrow morning. I file for divorce. Simultaneously, I file an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets, bank accounts, investment portfolios, credit lines, everything. We cut off his money supply. I will also file a restraining order preventing him from selling or transferring any assets from his company. She then pointed a pen at David. We need concrete proof of where that money went. We need the name on that account. And we need to know the true financial state of his company. I'm on it, David said. Psychologically, Jess continued, her eyes fixed on me again. We maintain the element of surprise. He thinks you're still in the dark, wondering where he is. We use that. Right now, he's in Cancun, spending your money, feeling smug and safe. We let him enjoy that feeling for a little while longer. What do I do? I asked. Her lips curved into a sharp, predatory smile. You, my dear, are going to play the part of the loving, slightly clueless wife. You're going to send him a text message. I stared at her. What kind of text message? The kind a woman who is expecting her husband home tomorrow would send, she said, her eyes gleaming. Something sweet, something unsuspecting, something that will make him feel so secure in his deception that he won't see the guillotine until it's already falling. So that's what I did. Sitting in my childhood bedroom that evening, surrounded by old novels and faded photographs of a more innocent time, I composed the most difficult text of my life. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my heart pounding with a mixture of revulsion and cold resolve. Hey you. Hope the server crisis is almost over. Can't wait for you to be home tomorrow. The house feels so empty without you. Counting the hours. Love you? I stared at the little red heart emoji, a symbol of everything he had desecrated. I felt sick. But Jess was right. This was warfare. And in war, deception is a key weapon. I hit send. The reply came almost instantly. Love you too, baby. Can't wait to be home. It's been hell here. Big presentation tomorrow. Might be late, but I'll make it all up to you this weekend. I promise. Another lie. So smooth. So practiced. He felt no guilt. No remorse. He was already composing the next chapter of his deception. The story he would tell me when he returned from his romantic getaway with his pregnant mistress. But there was one more thing I had to do. Jess had given me a list of tasks. The first was to establish a new private bank account. The second was to contact a real estate agent. The third, and most important, was a preliminary step in reclaiming my property. Before I went to sleep, I sent a formal, certified email to the Maple Creek Property Management Company, to whom it may concern. This email serves as official notice that I, Ellen Vance, the primary owner of the property at 12 Oak Street, will be putting the house on the market for sale, effective immediately. Furthermore, I am revoking any and all permissions previously granted to Ethan Miller, or any member of the Miller family regarding access or residency at this property. Please update your records accordingly. Any attempt by them to access the property should be reported to me immediately. I attached a copy of the deed, highlighting my majority ownership. It was a small, procedural move, but it felt like the first cannon shot in the war. While Ethan was sunning himself on a beach in Mexico, I was quietly and methodically dismantling the life he thought was waiting for him. He had no idea that the home he was planning to return to no longer considered him its resident. He had no idea that his loving, supportive wife was sharpening her knives. He was celebrating his victory, unaware that the board had already been flipped. The next few days passed in a blur of calculated action. I operated with a chilling efficiency that surprised even myself. The grief was still there, a cold, heavy stone in my gut, but I compartmentalized it, locking it away in a room in my mind and refusing to enter. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford. Jess was true to her word. On Monday morning, a legal courier delivered the divorce papers to Ethan's empty office. Simultaneously, the court order freezing our assets went into effect. The first shots had been fired, and the enemy was still thousands of miles away, blissfully unaware they were under attack. My main task was the house. Our house? No. My house. I met with a top real estate agent Jess recommended. A sharp, no-nonsense woman named Brenda. We sat at my parents' dining table, the same table where I had revealed Ethan's betrayal, now transformed into my war room. You want to sell it fast? Brenda asked, her eyes scanning the property assessment. That means pricing it aggressively. Maple Creek is a hot market, but a quick sale means leaving some money on the table. The money is secondary, I said, my voice firm. What I want is for it to be sold. I want it gone. I want a closing date so soon it will make his head spin. Brenda gave me a shrewd look, a silent understanding passing between us. She had seen enough messy divorces to recognize the scorched earth tactics. I can do that, she said. We list it tomorrow. Price at 10% below market. We'll have offers by the weekend. We can probably close in 30 days. If we get a cash buyer. Do it, I said, signing the listing agreement without hesitation. Every signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The one person I hadn't heard from was Carol. I knew she was still in Cancun with the happy couple, but I expected her to return before them, to prepare the nest for her precious son and his new family. The thought of her walking into my house, planning where to put a crib in a room I had envisioned as a library, made my blood run cold. The call came on Wednesday afternoon, a day after the house was officially listed. I was at my parents' home, sorting through financial records, when my phone buzzed with her name. I took a deep breath, pressed the record button on a secondary app Jess had installed for me, and answered. Hello, Carol. Elena. I'm back, she announced, her voice brittle and devoid of any warmth. I'm at the house. Where are you? And why is there a for sale sign on the front lawn? The sheer arrogance of her question was staggering. She was standing in my house, questioning my decisions about my property. I'm in the city, I said calmly. And the sign is there because I'm selling the house. You're what? She shrieked, her voice rising in disbelief. You can't do that. That is Ethan's home. It's the family home. Actually, it's legally my home, Carol. And I decided I no longer want to live there. There was a sputtering sound on the other end of the line. You selfish little, after everything we've done for you. We welcomed you into our family. Did you? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Did you welcome me when you were toasting my husband's pregnant mistress? When you were introducing her to my neighbors as his fiancée? Was that your version of family? The line went silent. I had her. The direct hit left her momentarily speechless. But Carol Miller was not a woman who retreated. She attacked. So you know. She sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. Good. It saves us the trouble of telling you. Ethan was never happy with you. Elena, you were too ambitious. Too cold. You were never going to give him a child. Were you? Always to focus on your career. Chloe is a real woman. She knows what's important. She is giving my son a family. An heir. Every word was a poisoned dart, designed to wound me in the most personal way. The accusation of being cold, of being less of a woman because I hadn't borne a child, that was the same rhetoric she had subtly used against me for years. But hearing it now, so baldly stated, it didn't hurt. It clarified. It was evidence. And what is it you want from me? Carol, I asked, keeping my tone level. I have a document here for you, she said, her voice turning smug and businesslike. Ethan had his lawyer draw it up. It's a marital settlement agreement. It's very generous, all things considered. You sign it, and we can all move on with our lives. You can go back to your books and your meetings, and Ethan can have the family he deserves. A settlement agreement, I repeated. And what are the terms? It's simple. The house goes to Ethan. Of course. For the baby. You'll waive any claim to his company, it's his creation. After all, he'll let you keep your car and your personal savings. As I said, very generous. She was trying to bully me into signing away my entire life for a pittance. They really thought I was that weak. That's stupid. Leave it on the kitchen counter. Carol. I said. I'll do better than that. She spat. I'm coming to the city. I'll bring it to you. We need to get this sorted out before Ethan gets home. He shouldn't have to deal with your hysterics. Fine. I said. I'm at my parents' address. You know where it is. I hung up. My hands were trembling. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. I immediately called Jess. She's coming here. I said. After playing the recording for her. She's bringing their joke of a settlement agreement. Jess let out a low whistle. She just admitted to the entire conspiracy on a recorded line. Elena. This is pure gold. This woman is a gift that keeps on giving. Let her come. Be calm. Be polite. Take the papers. And say as little as possible. 2 hours later, Carol Miller swept into my parents' living room like a queen visiting the peasantry. She placed a thick envelope on the coffee table with a thud. Here, she said curtly. Have your father look it over if you must. But I advise you to sign it quickly. We have ways of making things very unpleasant for you if you try to fight this. Your reputation. Your career. It can all be very fragile. It was a direct threat. I looked her in the eye. My face a mask of neutrality. Thank you for bringing this. Carol. I will have my lawyer review it. Your lawyer? She scoffed. Don't waste your money. This is more than fair. You're lucky to be getting anything at all. She turned to leave. Then paused at the door, delivering her parting shot. You know, we always knew you weren't the right fit for our family. It's a relief to finally be done with the charade. The moment the door closed behind her, the mask dropped. The sheer, unmitigated gall of that woman. The venom. She was an architect of my misery. And she wore her cruelty like a badge of honor. But she had also just handed me one of the most powerful weapons in my arsenal. The next day, I had another mission. David's investigation had turned up the address of the apartment Ethan was apparently leasing. He suspected it was the love nest where he and Chloe had been living. It was in a new, high-end luxury building in the Seaport District. I need to go there. I told Jess. Why? She asked. Her brow furrowed. What's the end game? Jess. They have been operating as a married couple. Carol called Chloe his fiancée. Mrs. Henderson thought they were engaged. They are presenting themselves to the world as a couple on the verge of marriage. In some states, that could be seen as a common law marriage. While Massachusetts doesn't recognize it, the act of publicly holding themselves out as husband and wife is powerful evidence of the depth of the deception. I want to see it for myself. Reluctantly, she agreed it might have value. So, armed with the address and a plan, I went. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, with a concierge in the lobby. I didn't go in. Instead, I waited in my car across the street. I was about to give up when I saw her. Chloe. She was coming out of the building, dressed in expensive maternity wear, a designer handbag on her arm. She was radiant, glowing with health and happiness. The sight of her sent a jolt of pure acid through my veins. She walked to a nearby cafe. This was my chance. I walked into the lobby of her building, my heart pounding. I approached the concierge desk, forcing a bright, professional smile. Hi there. I said to the young man at the desk. I have a flower delivery for Chloe Sanders in apartment to 5B. She's not answering her phone. And the delivery slip says to leave it with the concierge if she's not home. I held up a generic order confirmation I had faked on my phone. The concierge smiled politely. Of course. Let me just buzz her apartment to confirm. My blood ran cold. This wasn't part of the plan. Oh, that's all right. I said quickly. I don't want to bother her if she's resting. I just need to verify the residence of the unit for the delivery confirmation. The slip says the recipients are Chloe Sanders and Ethan Miller. Can you just confirm that's correct? He glanced at his screen. Yep. That's them. Mr. Miller and Ms. Sanders. Apartment to 5B. I'll take the flowers for them. Perfect. I said. My voice unnaturally high. I pretended to rummage through my bag. Oh my gosh. You know what? My dispatcher just texted. The sender wants to cancel the order. Something about a fight. You know how it is. I gave him a conspiratorial eye roll. So sorry to have bothered you. I turned and walked out. My legs feeling like jelly. I had it. Verbal confirmation from a third party that Ethan and Chloe were cohabitating, presenting themselves as a unit. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jess. "We got it. The wire transfers went to a savings account in the sole name of Chloe Sanders. Over $150. 0. David also got a preliminary report on Ethan's company. It's a house of cards. He's been cooking the books for months. The company is nearly insolvent." I leaned my head back against the headrest of my car, the pieces clicking into place. This was never just about love or a baby. It was a financial escape plan. Ethan's company was sinking. He had forged my name to get a loan to keep it afloat. But it wasn't enough. He needed a complete exit strategy. He and Chloe and his family were cashing out our life together to fund their escape, leaving me to drown in the debt and wreckage of his failed business. A new, terrifying thought began to form in my mind. What would have happened if I hadn't come home early? They would have returned from Cancun. Ethan would have feigned surprise and devastation at the state of his company. He would have played the victim, and he would have used their manufactured generous settlement to bully me into taking on the debt, while he walked away clean, with a new family and a nest egg of stolen money. The depth of their depravity was far greater than I had imagined. And just as I was processing this, as the cold reality of their plot settled over me, I felt it. A strange, fluttering sensation in my lower abdomen. I dismissed it as nerves. Then it happened again. A wave of nausea, sudden and overwhelming, washed over me. I hadn't felt well for days, but I chalked it up to stress. My diet was a mess. I wasn't sleeping. But this was different. My mind raced back through my calendar. The conference in Chicago. The busy weeks leading up to it. I was always so regular. My cycle like clockwork. But now that I thought about it, I was late. 10 days late. A horrifying, impossible idea took root in my mind. No, it couldn't be. The irony would be too cruel, too cosmic a joke. I drove to the nearest pharmacy, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I bought a box, went into the sterile public restroom, and took the test. I sat on the closed toilet seat in the cold, quiet bathroom, and waited for the 3 longest minutes of my life. My gaze was fixed on the little plastic stick I had placed on the sink counter. I was numb, suspended in a state of disbelief, praying for a negative sign. The timer on my phone beeped, slowly, as if in a dream. I stood up and walked to the sink. I looked down at the little window, and there it was, unmistakable, too stark. Pink lines. Pregnant. I was pregnant. The 2 pink lines on that plastic stick shattered my carefully constructed world of cold logic and righteous anger. The rage that had been my fuel, the fury that had sharpened my focus, all of it evaporated in an instant, replaced by a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated panic. I stumbled out of the pharmacy, the positive test clutched in my hand like a grenade with the pin pulled. I made it to my car before my legs gave out, and I collapsed into the driver's seat, gasping for air. Pregnant. The word was an alien sound in my head. A baby. Ethan's baby. A child conceived in the final, dying days of a marriage that was already a lie. A sibling to the child he was having with Chloe. The child his family had celebrated while they plotted my erasure. The cosmic cruelty of it was a physical blow. They had accused me of being cold, of being unwilling to provide an heir. And all the while, a new life was quietly beginning inside me. My mind spun out of control. What did this mean? For the divorce? For the war I had just declared? How could I wage a scorched earth campaign against the father of my child? The thought of this baby connecting me to that family, to Carol, to the web of their deceit for the rest of my life, was suffocating. My first instinct, raw and visceral, was an overwhelming urge to make it go away, to erase it, just as they had tried to erase me. An appointment, a procedure. It could be undone. I could still be free. The thought brought a momentary, dizzying sense of relief, followed immediately by a wave of shame so profound it made me nauseous again. This wasn't just a complication. It was a life, an innocent life caught in the crossfire of its parents' wreckage. I sat in my car for over an hour, parked in a faceless suburban strip mall, completely paralyzed. The world outside, people running errands, laughing, living their normal lives seemed to belong to a different planet. I was adrift, alone in a universe that had suddenly become hostile and unrecognizable. I couldn't tell my parents. Not yet. Their fury on my behalf was a protective shield. But this news would shatter them. This complicated everything in ways they couldn't fix. There was only one person I could talk to. The one person who knew every ugly detail and wouldn't flinch. I drove to Jess's office. Unannounced. Her assistant looked up, surprised, as I walked in without an appointment, my face pale and my expression grim. "Jess," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I need to see her. Now." Jess must have seen the sheer terror in my eyes, because she met me in the lobby and pulled me straight into her office, closing the door firmly behind us. "What is it? What happened?" she asked, her sharp gaze scanning my face for a clue. I couldn't speak. I simply opened my hand and showed her the pregnancy test. She stared at it, her jaw slackening for a fraction of a second before her lawyerly composure snapped back into place. She took the test from my hand, looked at it closely, and then placed it gently on her desk. She sank into her chair, her eyes never leaving mine. "Okay," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Okay, Elena. This changes things. I don't know what to do." I choked out, the words unlocking the tears I had been holding back. They streamed down my face, hot and silent. I can't be tied to him forever. "Jess, I can't bring a child into this mess." "Yes, you can," she said, her tone firm, cutting through my panic. "You can. The question is, do you want to? And you don't have to answer that right now. We have time to think. But first, we need to understand the new landscape." She stood up and began to pace, the familiar motion a sign that her mind was already working, analyzing, strategizing. "Legally," she began, thinking aloud, "a pregnancy solidifies your financial claims. Child support is a given. For 18 years. It makes his abandonment, his financial fraud, even more egregious in the eyes of a judge. He wasn't just defrauding his wife, he was endangering the mother of his unborn child. It makes him a monster." She stopped and looked at me. "But the personal side, that's what matters. If you keep this child, he will have a claim to it. Paternity rights, visitation. He will be in your life. There's no escaping that." The word visitation sent a shard of ice through my heart. The thought of handing my child over to Ethan, of that child spending weekends with Carol and Chloe, it was unthinkable. "And if I don't?" I whispered, the words tasting like poison. Jess came over and put a hand on my shoulder. Her expression was devoid of judgment, full of a fierce, protective loyalty. "If you don't, then that is your choice and your choice alone. And no one, least of all me, will ever question it. We proceed as planned. We destroy him in court, and you walk away free and clear to start a new life." She laid out the two paths before me with stark clarity. One path led to freedom, a clean break from the wreckage of my past. The other led to a lifetime entanglement with the people who had hurt me most. But it was also the only path that led to my child. "I need to think," I said, my voice trembling. "Take all the time you need," she said. "But while you're thinking, our original plan moves forward. In fact, we accelerate it. Ethan and his entourage are due back from Cancun tomorrow. When he lands, I want his world to have already been turned upside down." That evening, the first domino fell. Brenda, the real estate agent, called. "We have an offer," she said, her voice electric with excitement. "All cash. A developer who wants the land. They're waiting inspections, and they're willing to close in 2 weeks. They've offered 85% of the asking price, which, considering we priced it to move, is a fantastic deal for a quick, clean sale. Take it," I said without a moment's hesitation. The developer could bulldoze the house for all I cared. I wanted it gone. I signed the papers electronically that night. The house was sold. The next afternoon, I was at my parents' place, trying to distract myself with work emails, when my phone began to ring. It was Ethan. I stared at his name, my heart starting to pound a frantic, sickening rhythm. He must have landed. He must have discovered the truth. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A second later, a text message appeared. "Elena, call me now. What the hell is going on?" My card was just declined. I ignored it. A few minutes later, another call. I ignored that too. Then a string of increasingly frantic texts. "Why is our joint account frozen? I can't get any money out. I just got an alert from the office. A court order. What did you do? Brenda from Maple Creek Realty just called me. She said you accepted an offer on the house. You can't sell the house without me. Elena." His panic was a bitter, satisfying tonic. The smug, Confident man on the beach in Cancun was gone, replaced by a desperate, cornered animal. The calls kept coming, one after another. From Ethan. From Carol. From his father. Richard. I put my phone on silent and turned it face down on the table. Then, an email popped up on my laptop. The subject line was just my name. It was from Ethan. Elena, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you need to stop it right now. You have no idea what you're messing with. You are going to ruin everything. Turn the accounts back on. Call our real estate agent and tell her it was a mistake. We will talk when I get to the house. We will sort this out. Do not make me come and find you. The last line was a threat, thin and brittle. He was trying to intimidate me, to scare me back into my box. The old Elena might have flinched. The new Elena felt nothing but contempt. He had no power over me anymore. Suddenly, I knew what I had to do. The choice that had been paralyzing me for the past 24 hours became startlingly, terrifyingly clear. My decision wasn't about Ethan. It wasn't about revenge. And it wasn't about freedom. It was about the tiny, innocent life inside me. That life deserved a mother who was a fighter, not one who ran away. This baby, my baby, was not tied to my painful past. It was my future. And I would protect that future with everything I had. This wasn't just about money and a house anymore. This was about building a safe world for my child. A world where the Millers and their poison could never touch us. And to do that, I couldn't just win. I had to annihilate them. My phone rang again. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Is this Elena Vance? A woman's voice asked. It was an older voice, raspy, with a hint of a classic Boston accent. Who is this? I asked, wary. My name is Mav Miller, she said. Richard Miller is my brother. I heard you're having some trouble with my family. I was stunned into silence. I knew Richard had a sister, but I had never met her. Ethan had mentioned her once, years ago, dismissing her as a crazy aunt the family had cut ties with long ago. I'm not sure what you're talking about, I said carefully. Mav let out a dry, humorless laugh. Oh, I think you do. My brother and his horrible wife have been running their mouths. Word gets around. I heard they're trying to throw you out for some little tramp. That sounds like them. Her voice was filled with a bitterness that was decades old. Why are you calling me? I asked. Because I hate my brother, she said, her voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial whisper. I've spent the last 30 years watching him build his perfect little life on a foundation of lies and stolen money. He and that snake Carol ruined my life, and they ruined my father's good name. She paused, and I could hear her take a ragged breath. I've been waiting a long time for someone to finally have the guts to stand up to them. I think that someone might be you. You've already caused more chaos in 48 hours than anyone has in 30 years. What is it you want, Mav? I asked, my heart beginning to beat faster. I want to help you, she said. My brother thinks he's untouchable. He's not. He's sloppy. And I have proof. Proof of everything. Tax evasion. Fraud. The dirty money that started his first business. The real reason Ethan's little startup ever got off the ground. Everything you need to not just divorce that worthless nephew of mine, but to send him and his father to prison. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was a weapon I hadn't even known existed. Meet me, she said, naming a small, discreet coffee shop in the North End for the following morning. Come alone, and I'll give you the key to burning the whole Miller empire to the ground. The North End coffee shop was a small, dark place that smelled of roasted beans and old wood. It was the kind of establishment that had existed for decades, a holdout against the trendy cafes and sterile chains. Mav Miller was sitting in a booth in the back corner, a ghost from a past I never knew. She was older than I expected, probably in her late 60s, with a cloud of weary gray hair and eyes that were startlingly sharp and intelligent. They were Miller eyes, but unlike the smug certainty in Richard's or the weak pleading in Ethan's, Mav's eyes held a lifetime of defiance. She watched me approach, her gaze assessing, taking in every detail. I slid into the booth opposite her, my hands clasped tightly around my purse. You came, she said. It wasn't a question. You gave me a compelling reason to. I replied. A waitress came over, and Mav ordered 2 black coffees without asking me. She seemed to assume I wasn't the type for frivolous things like milk or sugar. She was right. My brother, Richard, she began, her voice low and raspy, is a thief. He always has been. Our father owned a successful construction supply company. It was supposed to be for both of us. But when he got sick, Richard took control. He created false ledgers, cooked the books, and systematically siphoned money into his own shell corporations. By the time my father died, the company was a hollowed-out husk. Richard declared it bankrupt and walked away with a fortune, leaving me with nothing but debts. He told everyone I was unstable, that I had a spending problem. He and Carol painted me as a crazy, irresponsible sister, so no one would listen when I told them the truth. Her story was chillingly familiar. The character assassination, the financial manipulation, it was the same playbook they were trying to use on me. And Ethan? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Ethan is his father's son, she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. Weak. Entitled. He learned everything he knows from Richard. That little tech startup of his? The seed money came from one of Richard's offshore accounts, illegally. And I'm sure Ethan has continued the family tradition. The Millers don't build things, my dear. They take them. The waitress set her coffees down and left. Maeve reached into her worn leather handbag and pulled out a small, slim object. A USB flash drive. She slid it across the table. It was black, nondescript, but it felt as heavy as a block of gold. Everything is on there, she said. Copies of my father's original ledgers, scans of Richard's fraudulent incorporation papers for his shell companies, bank records from his offshore accounts, and the real Preze had a friend who worked in his accounting department for years. She was loyal to my father. Before she retired, she made copies of a separate set of books for Ethan's company. The real set. The ones that show a company drowning in debt, propped up by illegal cash infusions and fraudulent loans. She looked pointedly at me. Like, for instance, a loan taken out against a residential property without the co-owner's signature. My blood ran cold. She knew. How? I asked. I have my sources, she said with a grim smile. The Millers have made a lot of enemies over the years. You're just the first one with the courage to declare war. They think their money and their lawyers make them invincible. They use their power to isolate and intimidate their victims. They did it to me. They're trying to do it to you. They expect you to take a settlement and disappear quietly. She leaned forward, her sharp eyes boring into mine. Don't. Use this. Give it to your lawyer. Give it to the district attorney. Don't just divorce the boy. Ruin the father. Burn their whole corrupt house down. For my father. For me. And for yourself. I picked up the flash drive. Its cool metal surface a conduit for the righteous fury that was now coursing through me. This changed the entire game. My personal battle for a fair divorce settlement had just escalated into a war against a criminal enterprise, and the child growing inside me would be born into a world free from their name, their influence, their dirty money. This was how I would protect my baby. Not just by cutting ties, but by severing their roots and salting the earth where they had grown. Why now? I asked her. After all these years, why help me? Her gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of an old, deep sadness in her eyes. Because you're having a child. That's what my source told me. And no child should have to carry the Miller name. It's a curse. You're giving that baby a chance to be free. That's something worth fighting for. I left the coffee shop with the USB drive tucked safely in my purse and a new, terrifying sense of purpose. The meeting with Maeve was the midpoint of my war. The turning point where the tide shifted irrevocably in my favor. Ethan and his family thought they were playing checkers. I was about to start playing chess. And I had just been handed their king. I went straight to Jess's office. I didn't call. I walked in and asked her assistant to clear the next hour. In her office, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and opened the files. Jess was silent as we clicked through the folders. Scanned documents, spreadsheets, complicated flowcharts of money moving through offshore accounts. It was a stunningly detailed chronicle of 30 years of greed and corruption. Jess, who had seen the ugliest side of humanity in her line of work, let out a long, low whistle. My God, Elena, she breathed, staring at the screen. This isn't just a divorce case anymore. This is Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. This is RICO-level stuff. Mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering. Maeve wasn't exaggerating. This can send them both to federal prison for a very long time. The weight of it settled on me. This was bigger than I could have ever imagined. So what do we do? I asked. We adjust the strategy, Jess said, her eyes gleaming with a lawyer's predatory excitement. We are no longer on the defensive, trying to claw back what's yours. We are on the offensive, This USB drive is our leverage. We can use it to force a settlement that leaves them with nothing. Or we can hand it over to the authorities and watch them burn. I want to watch them burn. I said. My voice cold and clear. I want consequences. Real consequences. For what they did to me. To Miv. To everyone. Then that's what we'll do. Jess said. But we do it on our terms. At a time and place of our choosing. We need to create a scenario where their downfall is not just legal, but public and spectacular. The plan began to form in our minds. A brilliant, terrible strategy for the final confrontation. We knew, based on Ethan's and Carol's personalities, that they wouldn't let this go. They wouldn't accept their losses and negotiate quietly. Their arrogance wouldn't allow it. They would escalate. They would come for me, convinced they could still bully and intimidate me into submission. They would try to humiliate me. And that was exactly what we were counting on. The final piece of the puzzle came from David 2 days later. He called me, his voice tight with urgency. Lena, I have something for you. He said. It's about Chloe's pregnancy. Something felt off to me. The timeline. So I did some digging. And I got lucky. A friend of a friend works at the clinic she went to for her first ultrasound. And I asked, my heart starting to pound. Legally, I can't tell you what's in her medical records. But I can tell you this. I pulled the travel records for Ethan's brother, Kevin. He was in San Diego for a business conference 9 months ago. His wife, Tiffany, wasn't with him. But you know who was listed as a conference assistant on the same trip? My mind raced. Chloe. Bingo. David said. And I may have, unofficially, obtained a DNA sample from a water bottle Kevin threw away after leaving a gym yesterday, and from a coffee cup Chloe used at an outdoor cafe. The line went quiet for a moment. David. I breathed. Are you saying? The lab results just came in. Lena. He said. His voice grim. The baby Chloe is carrying. There's a 99.9% probability that the father is Kevin Miller. The world tilted. It wasn't Ethan's baby. It was his brother's. The entire foundation of their grand plan Miller heir. The justification for throwing me away was a lie. Was Ethan in on it? Was he so desperate to escape his life with me and his failing business that he would knowingly raise his own nephew as his son? Or was Chloe playing them all? A master manipulator securing her future with one brother while sleeping with the other. In the end, it didn't matter. The lie itself was the ultimate weapon. I looked at the evidence I had compiled. The recording of Carol's threats. The proof of cohabitation. The sale of my house. The mountain of financial crimes on Mav's USB drive. And now, this. A paternity secret that would detonate the Miller family from within. I had everything I needed. Ethan and his family thought they were coming home to fight a scorned wife for money. They had no idea they were walking into an execution. And I would be the one to swing the axe. The final call came from Jess the next morning. It's time, she said. He's been served. He knows about the divorce, the frozen assets, the house. My source at his company says he's in a rage. He, Carol, Richard, and the rest of the clan are on their way to your office right now. They're coming to make a scene. I know, I said calmly, looking at my reflection in the window of my office at the publishing house. I was dressed in a sharp, dark blue dress, my hair pulled back neatly. I looked calm, composed, ready. I'm counting on it. The screen in the lobby is ready? Jess asked. The A.V. team just finished setting it up. I replied. David is on his way. He'll be waiting outside. Good luck, Elena. Jess said. I don't need luck, I said, hanging up the phone. I have the truth. I stood up and walked out of my office, my heels clicking purposefully on the polished floor. I was heading to the lobby. Not to hide, but to wait for them, to face them. The final act was about to begin, and I would be standing center stage when the curtain fell. The lobby of the publishing house was a grand, open space with a soaring atrium and cool marble floors. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a place of calm, intellectual prestige, a cathedral dedicated to the power of stories. Today, it was my arena. My colleagues moved around me, caught up in the lunchtime rush, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to break. I had told my boss that I was expecting a difficult personal confrontation, and had asked for her discretion. She had looked at me with concerned eyes and simply nodded, quietly alerting building security to be on standby. At the far end of the lobby, a massive digital display screen, usually used for book launches and author events, was currently displaying our company's logo. It was waiting. A blank canvas for the truth. I stood near the reception desk, my back straight, my hands clasped loosely in front of me. I was strangely calm. The fear and panic that had consumed me were gone, burned away by the white-hot certainty of my purpose. I was no longer a wife fighting for her share of a broken marriage. I was an agent of consequence, here to deliver a reckoning that was long overdue. They arrived precisely as Jess's source had predicted. The glass doors of the lobby slid open, and the Miller clan stormed in. There were 6 of them. Ethan, his face a mask of contorted rage. Carol, her features pinched with righteous indignation. Richard, exuding an aura of entitled authority. And behind them, like vultures trailing the predators, were Kevin and his wife, Tiffany. And with them, looking nervous but defiant, was Chloe, her pregnant belly a prominent declaration of her victory. They were a force of nature, a tempest of anger and privilege, expecting to thunder through this quiet, respectable place and bowl me over with the sheer force of their collective will. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. The quiet hum of the lobby died down as my colleagues stopped to stare at the unfolding drama. Elena. Ethan's voice boomed across the marble floor, sharp and accusatory. He pointed a trembling finger at me. There you are. What the hell do you think you're doing? He strode towards me, his family fanning up behind him like a conquering army. I held my ground. I did not flinch. I'm at work. Ethan, I said, my voice even and clear, carrying easily in the sudden silence. This is my office. A place you are no longer welcome. Your office? Carol sneered, stepping forward. You think your little job matters now? You've frozen our accounts. You're trying to steal our home. You're trying to ruin my son. Your son did a fine job of that himself. Carol, I replied, my gaze unwavering. Richard stepped forward, attempting to take control, his voice low and menacing. Listen to me, Elena. This has gone far enough. You are going to call off your lawyer. You are going to sign the papers we sent you. You are going to end this foolishness right now, or I promise you, you will regret it. It was the same tactic he had used to crush countless others, including his own sister. A threat wrapped in the guise of fatherly advice. But I was not Maev. I would not be broken. The only thing I regret, I said, letting my eyes drift from Richard's face to Ethan's, is that I wasted 7 years of my life believing any of you were decent human beings. That was the final straw for Ethan. His face flushed to dark, ugly red. The last vestiges of his control snapped. You ungrateful bitch, he roared, lunging toward me. He raised his hand, his intention clear. He was going to strike me. In that instant, everything slowed down. I saw the rage in his eyes, the shock on the faces of my colleagues, the flicker of fear in Chloe's expression. I took one deliberate step back, out of his reach, and then I spoke the words that would change everything. Don't, I said, my voice ringing out with an authority that stopped him cold. I'm pregnant. A collective gasp went through the lobby. Ethan froze, his hands still raised, his face a canvas of disbelief and confusion. Carol's jaw dropped. Richard's eyes widened. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the building's ventilation. What? Ethan whispered, the single word hoarse and incredulous. I'm pregnant. Ethan, I repeated, louder this time, for the benefit of our audience, about 7 weeks along. With your child. I let the news settle. A bomb dropped into the heart of their carefully laid plans. I watched the calculation in their eyes. Carol's mind was racing, instantly recalibrating. Another grandchild. A legitimate one this time. Richard was already assessing the legal and financial implications. Chloe looked at Ethan, her eyes wide with panic. Her position as the sole mother of the next Miller heir was suddenly under threat. Ethan just stared at me, his rage replaced by a dizzying confusion. That's not possible. He stammered. Oh, it's very possible, I said. I gave a small, sad smile. It seems that while you were building a new life with your mistress, you and I created one last thing together. Carol recovered first. Her cunning mind saw an angle, a way to twist this to her advantage. Well, she said, a brittle smile forming on her lips. This changes things. Of course. A baby. A Miller baby. Elena, you must see now that this divorce is foolish. We are a family. We will work this out. For the sake of the children. The hypocrisy was so astounding it was almost beautiful. One moment I was a selfish bitch. The next I was the cherished mother of a Miller baby. You're right, Carol, I said. My voice dangerously sweet. Family is so important. And secrets can tear a family apart, which is why I think it's time we put all the secrets out on the table. I raised a small remote I had been holding in my hand and pointed it at the giant screen behind them. I pressed a button. The company logo on the screen vanished, replaced by a photograph. It was a picture from the airport, the one I had first seen on the digital frame. The whole Miller clan, smiling with Chloe and her pregnant belly. A low murmur went through the lobby. This, I said, my voice resonating through the silent space, is a family that was celebrating their new grandchild while I was away on business. Click. The next image appeared. It was a screenshot of the resort confirmation for Mr. Ethan Miller and Ms. Chloe Sanders. Click. A photo of Ethan and Chloe kissing on a beach, downloaded from our shared cloud. And this, I continued, my voice gaining strength, is the affair that they were all complicit in? I turned my gaze to Carol. You were concerned about my reputation. Carol, you threatened my career. But I have a recording of our conversation the other day. Would you like to hear it? Her face went pale. I didn't have the audio ready. But the bluff was enough. She took a step back, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Click. The screen went black. Then, a single document appeared. A scanned copy of a lab report. The words were large enough for everyone to read. Paternity test results. I let them see the names. Mother, Chloe Sanders. Alleged father 1, Ethan Miller. Alleged father 2, Kevin Miller. Tiffany, who had been standing silently behind her husband, gasped. Kevin went rigid, his face turning the color of ash. I was so confused by all of this. I said, feigning innocence, so much good news, so many babies. I just wanted to get some clarity. So I had a private investigator look into things, and he found the most interesting thing. I let the silence hang in the air for a heart-stopping moment. Tiffany was now staring at her husband, her eyes wide with dawning horror. Kevin wouldn't look at her. Click. The conclusion of the report filled the screen. A bright red box highlighted the final sentence: the alleged father, Kevin Miller, cannot be excluded as a biological father of the fetus. The probability of paternity is 999%. A scream tore through the lobby. It was Tiffany. She launched herself at her husband, her nails raking at his face. You bastard! She shrieked. You slept with her. That baby is yours. Chaos erupted. Kevin tried to fend off his wife. Chloe looked like she was about to faint. Ethan was staring at his brother, then at Chloe, his face a mask of utter betrayal. The perfect family was imploding in the most public way imaginable. But I wasn't finished. It seems the Miller family is even more complicated than I thought, I said, my voice cutting through the pandemonium. But the lies don't stop there, do they? Richard? I aimed the remote again. Click. The DNA report was replaced by a complex flowchart of offshore accounts and shell corporations. A slide from the presentation I had built from Ev's USB drive. This is a story about where the Miller family money really comes from, I announced. It's a story of fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. A story that starts with you, Richard, stealing your own father's company, and ends with you, Ethan, propping up your failing business with illegal funds and a loan you took out by forging my signature. Click. A copy of the forged loan document appeared on screen. My real signature next to the clumsy forgery. Richard stared at the screen, his face ashen. The confident, intimidating patriarch was gone, replaced by a frightened old man whose life of crime was suddenly on display for the world to see. The glass doors to the lobby slid open again. But this time, it wasn't family. It was David, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. He held up his badge, his face grim and professional. Richard Miller. David's voice was calm but carried the weight of the law. Ethan Miller, you are under arrest for bank fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. It was the final, devastating blow. The family didn't just implode. It was annihilated. Carol let out a wail and crumpled to the floor. Richard looked like he was having a heart attack. And Ethan just broke. The last thread of his sanity snapped. He looked at the chaos around him, his hysterical mother, his disgraced father, his cheating brother, his weeping mistress. Then his eyes found me. The architect of it all. A guttural roar of pure animal rage erupted from his chest. "You!" he screamed, his face inhuman with fury. He lunged, not at the police, but at me. He bypassed security, his only focus the source of his ruin. His hands closed around my throat, squeezing, cutting off my air. The world exploded into black and silver stars. For a terrifying second, I thought, this is it. This is how it ends. Then he was gone, ripped off me by the officers, who slammed him face first onto the cold marble floor. David was kneeling beside me, his hands on my shoulders. "Are you okay? Lena, are you hurt?" I gasped for air, my throat burning, my hand instinctively going to my stomach. I looked down at Ethan, pinned to the floor, still struggling, still screaming my name. His face was pressed against the marble, a reflection of the shattered man he had become. The police were cuffing him, reading him his rights as he continued to sob and rave. My colleagues were staring, their faces a mixture of horror and awe. It was over. The war was won. The victory was absolute, spectacular, and more terrible than I could have ever imagined. The aftermath of the lobby confrontation was a maelstrom of flashing lights, hushed official voices, and the stunned, staring faces of my colleagues. David stayed by my side until the paramedics arrived, insisting I get checked out despite my assurances that I was fine. They led me to a quiet conference room, away from the prying eyes and the debris of the Miller family's public implosion. As they took my blood pressure and listened to my breathing, I could hear the faint, receding wail of sirens outside. They were gone. Ethan, Richard, they were being taken away, swallowed by the consequences they had spent a lifetime creating. The assault charge was the final, irreversible nail in Ethan's coffin. Attempting to strangle his pregnant, estranged wife in a public lobby filled with witnesses, in front of police officers who were there to arrest him for financial crimes. It was an act of self-destruct so complete it was almost poetic. There would be no bail. There would be no lenient plea bargain. He had incinerated any chance of mercy. Jess arrived a few minutes later, her expression a mixture of professional concern and a kind of odd respect. "I heard," she said, her eyes scanning me for any sign of injury. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay," I said, my voice hoarse. My throat ached. A physical reminder of Ethan's final, desperate act of violence. "My baby is okay." "Good," she said, her relief palpable. She looked toward the lobby. "It's a mess out there. News crews are starting to arrive. My phone hasn't stopped ringing." She took a deep breath. "You did it, Elena. You didn't just win. You obliterated them." I nodded slowly, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving behind a profound, bone-deep weariness. It was done. But the victory didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet. It felt like the unnerving silence after a hurricane has passed, leaving behind a landscape of wreckage. In the days that followed, the story of the Millers' downfall became a local media sensation. A wealthy, prominent family from the suburbs, torn apart by a lurid tale of infidelity, secret babies, and massive financial fraud. My name was everywhere. But through Jess, I issued a single, concise statement requesting privacy for myself and my family, stating that I would be focusing on my health and the well-being of my unborn child. Then, I went silent. I refused all interviews, letting the court documents and the spectacle in the lobby speak for themselves. The legal proceedings were swift and brutal for the Millers. Faced with the mountain of evidence from Manev's USB drive, Richard and Ethan had no defense. They pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy to avoid a lengthy, even more humiliating trial. Richard, given his age and a sudden onslaught of health problems, received a sentence of 7 years in federal prison. Ethan, due to the violence of his final act, received 10. The rest of the family scattered like dust in the wind. Carol, disgraced and bankrupt, moved to Florida to live with a distant relative, vanishing from the world she had once tried to rule. Kevin and Tiffany's marriage dissolved in a bitter, ugly divorce. Chloe, after giving a full deposition against the Millers in exchange for immunity, took a quiet settlement from Kevin and disappeared, presumably to start a new life in a new city where no one knew her name. A few days after the sentencing, I received a request from the prison. Ethan wanted to see me. A part of me wanted to refuse, to close the door on him forever. But another part knew I needed this one final, quiet confrontation to truly sever the ties. I needed to look him in the eye, not as a victim or a warrior, but as a survivor, and close this chapter myself. The visitation room was a sterile, gray space, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and despair. We sat on opposite sides of a thick pane of plexiglass, speaking through a crackly intercom. He was wearing a drab prison jumpsuit, the expensive suit and confident swagger a distant memory. He looked hollowed out, the anger and entitlement replaced by a gaunt, broken emptiness. He had aged a decade in a few weeks. He picked up the receiver, his hands trembling slightly. "Elena," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "Ethan," I replied, my voice calm and steady. He started to cry, not the furious, self-pitying sobs of a man caught, but the quiet, hopeless tears of a man who has lost everything. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "God, Elena, I'm so sorry. For everything. For Chloe. For the money, for hurting you. I was a coward. I was drowning. In debt. In my father's expectations, and I took the easy way out. I destroyed everything. I destroyed us." I listened, my expression unreadable. I felt nothing. Not pity. Not anger. Not even satisfaction. He was a stranger to me now, a ghost from a life I no longer recognized. "I know you'll never forgive me," he continued, his voice cracking. "I don't deserve it. But the baby, our baby, please, Elena, don't take that away from me too. Let me be a part of its life. I'll do anything. I'll sign away my rights to everything else. Just let me be a father. When I get out of here, I can be better. I swear I can be better." This was the moment I had come for. The final verdict. My verdict. I leaned closer to the glass, my gaze meeting his. "I am going to have this baby," I said, my voice soft but infused with the strength of forged steel. "I am going to love this child with every piece of my soul. I will raise it to be strong, and kind, and honest. It will have a wonderful life, filled with love and support from my family." I paused, letting the words sink in. "This baby will be born of Vance, my last name. And when I fill out the birth certificate, in the space where it asks for the father's name, I am going to leave it blank." His face crumpled, the last flicker of hope in his eyes extinguishing. "No," he choked out. "Elena, please don't do that. It's my child. You gave up the right to be a father when you tried to destroy its mother," I said, my voice unwavering. "My child will never know your name. It will never visit you in prison. It will never have to carry the weight of your crimes or the poison of your family. As far as my child is concerned, you will not exist. Your sentence from the judge is 10 years. Your sentence from me is a lifetime of absence. That is my final word." I stood up, placed the receiver back in its cradle, and turned my back on him. I did not look back as I walked out of that gray, hopeless room, leaving the ghost of my husband to fade into the past. The months that followed were quiet. The media storm died down. The sale of the house closed. And the money, along with the settlement from the divorce, was more than enough to secure a future for me and my child. I left my job at the publishing house, deciding I needed a completely fresh start, away from the whispers and the pitying looks. With the help of my parents, I bought a small, sunny apartment in a quiet part of Boston, one that overlooked a beautiful park. I spent my days reading, walking, and preparing for the new life that was growing inside me. The anger that had fueled me for so long had served its purpose, and now, it receded, leaving behind a profound sense of peace. I had fought the war, and I had won. But the true prize wasn't the money or the victory. It was the silence, the freedom. One cool spring morning, almost a year after I had come home early from Chicago, I stood by the window of my new living room. The sun was streaming in, casting a warm glow on the freshly painted walls of the nursery. My hand rested on my large, round belly, and I felt a gentle kick from within. I looked out at the park, where children were laughing on the swings and couples were walking hand in hand. The world was still turning. Life went on. I had walked through the fire of betrayal and emerged from the ashes, not unscathed, but remade. The scars were a part of me, a reminder of the strength I never knew I had. A small smile touched my lips. The past was a closed book, a story of pain and ruin. But here, in this quiet, sunlit room, a new story was about to begin. My story, and my child's story. It would be a story of hope, of resilience, and of a love so powerful it had been born from the wreckage of a lie. The war was over, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt a sense of profound, unshakable peace. My new life was just beginning.